For decades, college athletes were not paid for their success on the field, no matter what part they played in those multi-million-dollar television contracts. Pay to play, if caught, could lead to an athletic accomplishment being wiped from the records and years of hardship for a collegiate program. In 2021, the landscape changed. The NCAA changed its stance after legal battles and mounting public pressure. Pay to play was allowed through name, image, and likeness deals. Some athletes now make millions of dollars in their collegiate years. Most don't. To be competitive, a college program needs support, funding, and transfers, and the common fan can now play a role. Tonight on NBC3, we explore the role you can play in understanding NIL, Pay to Play, the changing landscape of college sports, an NBC3 special program. Well, welcome into our conversation on Pay to Play, the changing landscape of college sports. I'm Matt Mulcahy.
And I'm Samantha Croston. We are taking a deep dive into name, image, and likeness and the impact that you can have on the topic, even if you are just a casual fan of Syracuse sports. We are joined today by former Super Bowl champion and star SU running back at Syracuse University, James Mungro. He stays in touch, of course, with the current SU football program and is a regular contributor to our Orange Zone podcast. You've seen him around.
We've seen him around a lot, yeah. I'm also joined by Syracuse University professor David Meluni, who teaches in the Falk College of Sports and Human Dynamics. He has more than 20 years of experience in the sports industry, a leading voice in the current college landscape of NIL deals, and actually teaches a course that has that title, Name, Image, Likeness, How To, essentially. Let's get to our first question tonight. You all saw the news last Friday. SU receiving a commitment from one of the more high-profile recruits in years for basketball. Keon Anthony, the son of Carmelo, choosing to come to Syracuse University. His choice was aired during his father's 7 p.m. Brooklyn podcast. That's a sign of the times, isn't it? The family addressing NIL after making the decision.
It wasn't a bag, right? It could be a bag because that's just the game that we have to play, right? So those are different type of conversations, but this was a real, actual, genuine decision as far as understanding every aspect of what is there and what's happening and what could be.
There you go. Father of an athlete. He's got plenty of money himself. He says it wasn't about the bag, to translate that. It wasn't about the package, the money, the benefits. Explain to us what is the bag to the fans watching? What is NIL?
Yeah, so NIL in its infant stages here got a little bit of a bad rap because of the term pay to play. But really, when you break down NIL, it's name, image, and likeness, and it's your right of publicity. So, for example, we use James here. From the standpoint of name, it's James having the opportunity to monetize his name, which would have been a jersey when he played at Syracuse University. And then image would be 65% right now, Matt, of the NIL deals or the transactions that we're seeing are on social media. So that would have been his Instagram, his TikTok. If he's doing an appearance, an autograph session is his image. And then really where this all started was the likeness, which would be the video game that we saw that came back this year, where James would be the running back, fullback at Syracuse in the college football game.
And that was the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit that started it all, right? A UCLA basketball player who stood up for his right to say, hey, somebody's profiting off my name, image, and likeness in particular.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting anything out of it. That's not right.
Absolutely. And likeness was the key to that with the O'Bannon case.
Let's talk about where we are. And over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to get to maybe where this is headed. But James, let's talk about your experience as an athlete, first of all. When you were recruited, did anybody say, here's the bag? Or if they did, that wasn't okay, was it?
It was not okay. Yes, there was, being recruited back in '97. There was some money that never got exchanged, but I was smart enough to decline that. And I chose Syracuse because that was one of the universities that did not offer me money. And, I don't really talk about that publicly, but I was offered money to play football.
And you decided, just as a rational, best decision for yourself, that wasn't what was motivating you at that time?
No, what I wanted was education, and I knew if I was able to play and stay healthy, I would be able to accomplish my dreams. That was really the motivation of it. And I didn't want to get involved with all the money and everything that happens when we get caught, and I didn't want that. And that's really honestly the reason why I chose Syracuse, because I asked Paul Pasqualoni, what are you going to be able to do for me? What are you going to do for my family? And he said, we're able to give you an education. And I said, where do I sign?
Well, it's interesting you bring up Syracuse University and the history, and certainly we all know that the basketball program had 2 hits over about a 30-year period under Coach Boeheim, where there were NCAA violations, and now you look back at them like the money in the Christmas card in the locker room, less than $100, and you wonder, wow, how things have changed, that we're bringing this, I guess, even that little exchange from a booster is now above board, we hope, that this process is available to athletes from as soon as they're a star in high school, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. And I always kind of use the analogy of we have students at Syracuse University that have the opportunities to, go play in a band and make some money. But student athletes weren't able to do that, right? So if you're looking back of using your social presence and using your name, image, and likeness with local brands, if it's a car dealership, if it's a pizza shop, it could be anything. Apparel deals, we're seeing a lot of that right now. So I always kind of joke a little bit, if you've watched the show Friday Night Lights, and the Buddy Garrity of the envelope that slides across the table, that's pay for play. And I think what the general public doesn't understand is it's these student athletes are trying to be entrepreneurs, right? And they do have some folks around them that are guiding them correctly, some that are not. But I think fans and parents of prospective student athletes need to understand what this really is. And we've gone back to the definition of your right of publicity to try to generate some funds, where it could be that, hey, I want to take my offensive lineman out to dinner, and I can use me as the quarterback for the we over the me.
It's very explicit in NCAA regulations as they currently exist, even in the era of NIL and transfer portals, that pay for play. That phrase is in there. I know we put it in the graphic, but that's explicitly not okay.
Correct. And there's currently a lawsuit, right, that we're working through, that on April 7th, we think, with some objections, will actually, all be settled. And what that will do is a Division I institution will be permissible as a pool pay, not a salary cap, but a pool pay, where an institution like Syracuse, if they could generate $20.5 million, and some may ask, where does that money come from? And it's going to come from the revenues that have been set up through the NCAA, and all the different schools will disclose that. And then Syracuse would be able to pay their student athletes up to $20.5 million per year based off of this past year's revenue. Now, I know you guys are all going to ask, how does Title IX come into play there? We're not quite sure.
Meaning equity and
across
all sports.
Across all sports.
Right.
All gender.
All of that. So I think it's something we have to understand. And at the same time, fans have to understand, like, if I give to the university now, moving forward, that could be a tax write-off. And a lot of times the narrative across the nation has been, well, am I giving an athlete an envelope of cash for their NIL?
Sam, you were a Division I athlete, a goalie at Colgate University. How does this sit with you recently relative to James's experience, for example, and in a different environment? How does this sit with you with where NIL stands right now? Do you feel like it's going in the right direction?
Yes, I do. I think a part of me thinks that, why weren't we doing this earlier? Why wasn't someone like Mungro able to profit off of his jersey? Because you got to admit, now looking back, don't you feel a little bit like, I kind of wish I would have been able to? And I understand that. I also think one thing that concerns me, I do think it's going in the right direction, in the fact that we as athletes are going to be able to profit now off of college athletes and whatnot, all of the hard work that they're doing.
Correct.
However, I do wonder how equal it's going to be. Like, the first thing when you brought up Title IX, I am thinking for some of those other athletes who are working as hard as, the football and basketball players, a soccer player, a field hockey player, when is everyone going to be able to reap the benefits of this? I know you might not have that answer. It's just something that I think about in the early stages of this process.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, Sam, right now is the revenues. So the lawsuit is an antitrust lawsuit, and I tell my students all the time, I'm not a lawyer, and I certainly am not playing one on TV today. But I think all of this, from the standpoint of, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is female athletes are crushing it. Like they are crushing it on social media.
Livy Dunn is at the top of the list,
Yeah.
right?
Livy Dunn is
Making
at
millions.
the top of the list.
The Cavenders from Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at some of the student athletes and even our student athletes, like our women's volleyball players have signed a deal for Hollister brand, right? But none of our male athletes did that. So I think it's something that we have to be prepared for and be cognizant of as we're moving forward. But Title IX is a big part of that. And scholarships, those limits on scholarships are gone in this settlement. It's going to be a roster limit. So right now, when you look at women's soccer is going to 28 roster limits, and then the schools will decide how they're going to sort
So
of.
some athletes will actually do worse under this, that they
Yes.
won't have that ticket paid anymore to continue their education.
Yeah. I mean, it's all going to come down to the roster limits. Baseball specifically had 40 on a roster. Now they're going to go down to 34. So that's going to, now baseball had 11.7 scholarships. That's 1,800 Division I baseball players. They're actually going to have to go down levels.
You bring up a lot of issues. We have about a half hour of discussion still ahead of us. We want to take a quick break here, but we've set the table. Where are we now? Where are we going? And there's a lot of legal cases that are driving this too. We'll be right back as our Pay to Play special continues. Well, welcome back to Pay to Play, the changing landscape of college sports. There's not enough time in the day to talk about all the issues, but we did take a question, in fact you did, Sam, to Coach Fran Brown during his weekly news conference about how NIL is affecting his program and his players.
I mean, it's good. NIL has allowed us to have the best quarterback in the country, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, Fadel Diggs, be able to retain all the players, and really just being able to show them financial literacy. Like right there on hand. It's bigger than just, a lot of people think they're just getting money, not doing it right. You're able to talk to them about taxes, teach them what that's all about, financial literacy, about saving. We got a 60-40 plan that you have to do when you're here. So there's a lot of things that NIL helps, and then it gives them notoriety. People get to see them and understand and know what they're about. They play in college football. There's so much money that the university and sports makes itself just because, we're in a billion-dollar industry, probably trillion-dollar industry, and when you're in an industry that makes that much revenue and bringing that much in, why not allow the players to be able to, benefit from that also? So I think it's an amazing job that we're able to get it done this way.
James, let's start with you on that. You heard that part about financial literacy.
Yes.
You graduated from Syracuse. You went to the NFL. You were around players making a lot of money.
Yes.
Do you think that's an important piece that can come out of this as almost a side benefit of all the other issues we're talking about?
I think that's one of the biggest important pieces, really, honestly, with the whole big scheme of the whole thing. When the college athlete is making money, they're younger than an NFL guy. NFL guys, as you notice, the percentage of going broke is very, is very high. So I was wondering, I was very interested what Coach said about the whole 60-40% thing, because I think that's a very big piece of the puzzle. And I wanted to ask Dave about that.
Sure.
About, do they have things in place so this kid cannot spend all of his money?
That's a good point, yeah.
In 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, James, you've hit the nail on the head, and this is where some of these lawsuits and other things that are transpiring, that they're not employees. So right now, when these athletes are doing a lot of this, they're independent contractors, and Coach Fran is the best, man. He hits the nail on the head, and it's a 1099. So you're going to have to pay taxes once we come to April.
Right, so you're getting that 1099 form says you made $5,000 from appearing at Wegmans, just
Sure.
for hypothetical. End of the year, you're going to owe a third of that is essentially to the feds or the state.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's
Right,
talking about.
right.
So when you look at this, and we'll talk a little bit about the House settlement when it comes down to Syracuse having, let's just say that the pool pay cap is $20.5 million, that these athletes are going to be sort of paid out, but they're not employees of Syracuse University, right? So they'll be 1099. He hits the nail on the head with the 60-40, that you better be putting some money aside because you know who's coming after you.
I know Sam wants to get to an issue about the UNLV program in a second. I just want to finish with Fran Brown first. He mentions Kyle McCord,
Yep.
the quarterback that wouldn't have come here if we didn't have NIL. How does that unfold? And I've got a ranking somewhere it says he's making $1 million in NIL. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but how does that work, at least in a You're trying to bring in the big quarterback. How does that get packaged together?
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at this, right? There's an opportunity for brands, and he's currently working with a range of brands, and Kyle's doing a great job. Terrell's Potato Chips, right, which is a local brand. You'll see them on the cover of that bag. And the other part is going to be donor, right? So from a donor standpoint, that goes through a collective. So there's 3 active collectives at Syracuse. So there's Syracuse Football NIL, there's Athletes Who Care, and there's Orange United. So in that capacity, it's a donor that's looking, and there's a quid pro quo for Kyle to do some different things. One of the big things of NIL that I think is pretty neat is, there's the opportunity for a donor to give to a student athlete. They may do some community service things, but they'll also bring some light to that charity. Then folks will see that, like Coach is talking about, if Kyle's saying, hey, please help donate to the Boys and Girls Club for a new locker room or a football field, that's actually a campaign that Kyle's using his name, image, and likeness to give back in a good way. And
you're concerned with this idea of a contract, what's written, what's stated. I was telling you guys about an interview I heard on an NIL podcast, a player going to Duke, who ended up at Duke and is very happy there, but going to another program was offered $850,000 by a coach he never met before. There was nothing in writing there, Sam, and that's played out at UNLV, hasn't it?
Yeah, that I think is the scary part. It reminds me of a situation from UNLV. The quarterback was Matthew Sluka there, at least for the first part of the year. We knew about this because he was supposed to be playing against Syracuse, and all of a sudden, he quits. And at first you're wondering, why is this? It turns out he was promised $100,000 by an assistant coach, and he hadn't received it. So at first, when that's all you hear, you're thinking, well, of course that makes sense why he left. But then you hear that that was only a verbal promise. There was never anything in writing. And now it leaves me feeling confused. I felt like on the one hand, Matthew Sluka was vulnerable in that sense, right? Because no one was really looking out for him. But on the other hand, that's why it makes me wonder, do these things have to be written down? I get it that it's not an employee, but when money's involved, shouldn't there be a contract of some sort?
Yeah, I mean, Sam, absolutely. And a lot of times that has to go through the collective. It's really impermissible for the coach. But again, there's a lot of hearsay back and forth and conversations, and there wasn't a contract there. And the collective, really, when he steps foot on campus, he should have had that in writing. Now, what saves Matthew in this case is the NCAA does have a rule in 2 sports, and a lot of folks don't understand this, and it's the basically redshirt year if you play in 25% of or participate in those events. So football and wrestling are the 2. And now they're coming back in the NCAA saying they're going to look at this for all sports. So think about men's basketball, women's basketball, lacrosse, baseball, women's soccer. If you're going to play in 25% and then you retain that eligibility. And then that's actually, I think, a ploy to save everything that's going on in the portal. So less kids are going to go into the portal if they know they still have 4 years, because you're a freshman that might get in a baseball game 11 times to pinch run or play defense instead of going in the portal and losing an entire year.
Well, you just opened a portal to a whole nother topic. James, what's your impression been of the transfer portal? Not to only go there, but as it relates to NIL and how there's these enticements out there, and do they really pay off for athletes?
Well, the whole transfer portal, this is what I want to ask you first, Dave. So, hypothetically speaking, I'm going to Syracuse.
Sure.
Syracuse wants me to come to school there, and I'm saying, okay, well, listen, I want to come there. You got to give me, $5 million. Now, through the NIL deal, I can still transfer, but in the contract it says, okay, you're coming to my school, I'm paying you $5 million, you have to stay here for 4 years, or you have to give me money back or whatever like that, vice versa. Can they write deals like that as well?
So, James, you've opened up a can of worms, and with the new settlement, there's no more letter of intent. So what's going to be is a financial aid package. So let's say quarterback, running back James comes from Pennsylvania, you're going to actually have a contract with that institution that we can actually pay you pool pay money. Are you going to have a scholarship, or are we going to pay you enough pool pay money that you pay for your own tuition? You're going to want scholarship, James.
Yes.
Okay. Anything separate from a collective, and let's say, for example, it's a deal with Pepsi, right, who's a provider of the university right now, they could sign a separate contract with you, and then that would be actually kind of that ambassador endorsement that you're going to do. There is a lot of different elements here that has to be unwrapped by all Division I institutions in the next year. So
That's unbelievable.
And this is supposed to start by next
Sure.
next school year,
Yeah,
2025?
it'll start in August 25,
Sure,
April 7th.
I'll mark this on the tape.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it
So-
real? I mean, really?
Yeah, so April
Wow.
7th is when the judge, based off of some different things that are going back and forth right now, it's ironically the day of the men's basketball national championship. So I don't know if that was done on purpose, but along those lines, it'll take place right here starting next fall.
Well, you bring up another point. Maybe this is a good time to take a break. The NCAA. What role does the NCAA play? Is it going to go away at some point? Will there just be major conferences for football and basketball, and the Olympic sports are left to swim or paddle on their own, so to speak? We're going to be right back and talk more about those issues. A lot more to get into. Seems like every question we ask, we have 10 more questions. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back. Pay to Play, the changing landscape of college sports. One of the most high-profile items that we've seen over the last, well, the fall season for football, especially since Kyle McCord came to town, is Kyle McCord on a bag of chips. Terrell's chips with that special honey flavoring. He's talking about the now famous quarterback about that endorsement.
So they reached out asking if I wanted to do a deal, and then I found out they were a Syracuse located brand, which was extremely exciting. And then to have the conversation that I was going to be on the wrapper of a bag of chips was pretty sweet, and so took them right up on it. And then they sent me a bag asking if I liked the flavor, and I was completely on board with it. Orange chips as well too, which was kind of fitting.
It all tied together. So, Prof, how does that work? And why is that particularly a win-win for the community and everybody?
It's a win-win because in this market, if you look at our professional athletes and the exposure, it's the Kyle McCords, it's the Emma Wards of the world, it's the JJ Starlings, right? So when I look at this, there should be more brands that are engaging with the student athletes. Number one, they're going to get those student athletes at a lower price point than a Josh Allen in the Buffalo or Rochester market. And then if you're looking at, quite frankly, putting up a sign on a billboard or putting up a sign on a website or a sign in the dome, quite frankly, like the student athlete is going to drive that because of their social media following. So, I mean, there's a brand, Apex in the mall, that's done an unbelievable job with 6 student athletes. And then the nice part about that is there's a little bit of give and take. And what I mean by that is Apex will go ahead and compensate the student athlete in cash, obviously, but then obviously in trade, which allows their teammates to come over and enjoy some of that as well.
Have a burger and go bowling.
Have a burger, go bowling, play laser tag. So the more brands locally that can get involved, that's actually going to turn an ROI, because student athletes right now, our student athletes at Syracuse, are really in the 20 and 30% on engagement on their social media platforms. I'm not sure that I can even track the engagement on a billboard driving on 690.
It brings up the issue of gender too, which I think is really fascinating. That how many times you as a sports reporter or on our broadcasts, we go to get a soundbite from the women athletes after the game, and they sound great. They're funny, they're articulate, and sometimes we go to the guys, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I had a good game." They don't have much to say. So there's the guy thing. And then there's the women who can really chat and be friendly and smile and still be a great athlete. That's really powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, when you talk about certain brands, like right now, actually categories, apparel, quick service restaurants, fashion, beauty, they are looking at athletes like way more times to a female athlete than they are to a male athlete. Female athletes, they smile. Females in general, they smile. They share their behind the scenes, getting on a bus, getting on an airplane. I tell our students all the time who work with student athletes, like, you can library bank photos, and then you can share them at a certain time when you think you need it, right? It's nothing against the male student athletes, but a lot of time that's the rough and the gruff, no matter what sport it is. And that's where you're seeing brands really take to female athletes on social media.
Yeah, it feels like that the male athletes are maybe winning on the playing field because they're Shedeur Sanders at Colorado, and high profile. He's Deion's son and so on. He's topping the list. He's bringing in millions of dollars. But the female athlete really has an opportunity to be more engaging, just like in real life.
Yeah, Matt, those two are actually not good examples because Shedeur
Well,
and Travis Hunter
also
they're
are engaging.
Always
So now you
smiling.
put it both together.
Those two guys
That's a good point.
are unbelievable.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I think it brings up a question that now has me curious. When you talk about social media, now social media isn't just something that's for fun. It's something where it is actually a moneymaker. You as a professor, should there be classes now on this? How to engage on social media, how to use social media platforms, and gender aside, does it give younger people an advantage in certain ways to be literate in social media and beyond?
Yeah, Sam, thanks for the plug. So I'm currently teaching 2 NIL courses, and this is what we talk about religiously is the social media aspect of that, right? And engagement, right? And how do you handle when someone posts something that's not so nice?
Yes. Accountability. Like what happens? Like I was just thinking about that. Like social media is all good, but there's always going to be some negative social media in something a guy is doing something wrong. So the accountability of the athlete, how does that affect the NIL stuff? Is there some, like, listen, if you don't do this, do that, we're taking your money back. What
are the rules? What are the parameters? What's the bar that has to be set?
Here, what's very interesting is then, James, going back to your comment before, there are contracts, right? And let's just say an athlete is supposed to post. Now, again, on Instagram, your post will stay, and then on a story, it goes away in 24 hours. So a lot of these brands are looking for a combination, and athletes don't understand that. So, Sam, back to your point, this is why we have a prestigious Falk College. We have Newhouse. We're trying to teach these student athletes. But a lot of them get scared, James, because if I have a bad game and I was supposed to post, I might not post about that brand because based off of the comments that I didn't have a great game. So now it's really the brands also being trained on how do you work with a student athlete, when is the right time, and how much do I post where I don't want this to look like Times Square.
Right. Well, because also, isn't this a lot of pressure just to at least say that? You know, if you, like Mungro, obviously you playing in college, to feel that way. And obviously it's one thing to know that some of the fans might be upset because you had a bad performance, but now you're seeing it everywhere on social media.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that something that should be talked about to a certain extent?
That would be difficult because after a game, I'm pissed and I don't want to be around nobody. Like, coach, don't take a shower,
Right, yeah.
I take a shower, but I don't want to be around nothing. And, through my experience with my girlfriend, my wife now, like after we lost the game with the Colts or whatever like that, like she gave me my good 24 hours just to relax. And it was nothing, I didn't do social media, I don't do social media now, but she knew I needed my distance. And, after this season, looking at this season, this past year with Pittsburgh, when Syracuse played Pitt, I don't know how somebody could go to social media and type something in after losing.
After 5 interceptions.
After getting crushed like
Right.
that against
Right.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I know I couldn't do it, so I don't know how these athletes are dealing with that.
So, James, to counter that a little bit is there's got to be a strategy and we got to teach you. That's not when to do that. The good thing about social media, specifically with Instagram and influencer marketing, is a thing called a collaborator. So in this case, let's say Kyle throws for 300 yards or Fadil Diggs has 3 sacks. The school can post something and then they can collaborate. And if Diggs wants to accept that, it shows up on his feed. So as much as it's a responsibility for an athlete, it's the real responsibility of the schools. Because the athletes can simply accept that. So if James has a 200-yard performance at Pittsburgh and we win that game and the school collaborates with James, when he gets on the phone, he will get a notification that Syracuse Athletics and Q's football want to collaborate, and then it shows up on his feed, which helps build his brand.
What about the kind of the office politics of that, though, where Fadil may have had a sack, but Justin Barron popped 2 guys, had 2 big hits, and he doesn't get it from the university.
Matt,
does he end up in somebody's office on Monday saying, hey, I had a chance to be viral here, and you guys didn't do it. Why not?
Yeah. So, Matt, that's a great piece, and Instagram is always evolving. It used to be that you could only collaborate with 1 and then 2, and now it's unlimited. So in that case, what you'll do is you'll collaborate with Justin and Diggs and McCord and LeQuint, and that's the way that they've evolved because Instagram's really good at understanding the power of influencer marketing, and I think that this is something to keep an eye on, that we're always learning, and I'm teaching in class too.
That's fascinating. We have more issues we want to get to. I still haven't got back to the NCAA issue.
Sure.
There's other lawsuits out there. Let me get to that other lawsuit that I'm thinking about while we have a couple minutes in this segment. Dartmouth College. Dartmouth, the athletes sued. They were represented by SEIU. They're union members now. And the college is saying, we're not talking to you. It's at an impasse.
Yeah, I mean,
What now is that where, James, would you have wanted to be represented by a union as a college athlete? You were as a pro. Did it help you as a pro?
Yeah, I think it did help when you have a union, but again, that's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of information that Dave is teaching us right now. It's a lot of stuff right there.
you didn't have class at the Colts except for your film.
Yeah, there was no classes at all like that by no means. That's a lot of information. I mean, so.
Well, I mean, do you see that as a, would there one day be a union for college football players in the, whatever it will be called then, the Power 4, it could be the Power 1.5 by then. Will there be a union representing a certain group of athletes and saying, this is the low for a right tackle, not the left tackle, but the right tackle gets this much, left tackle gets this much, quarterback 1 gets this, and it's structured because they're in a collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, so we're looking at two different things. Like we're talking about an antitrust with the House, and then we're talking now from that employment status, right?
Which is different for private and public universities.
Yeah, totally different from
Right.
private and public universities. So if you're a student athlete and you're James did have some time that he was able to go home. Well, I'm an employee in Syracuse University. If you're an employee, do you think Coach P would have let him go home as much as he was allowed to go home? No, right? There's going to be other different things that come down to you being an employee. Now, do I think that there should be some collective bargaining? But they can't, right? Because these are two different things. So I think what the House settlement, and we'll get into more of that, is trying to do is protect the student athlete from the standpoint to say, hey, you do deserve. And Sam, you hit the nail on the head. Last week I was listening to a podcast and a commissioner from a Power 5 conference, right, if you want to call it Group of 5, basically said that the NCAA is trying to rectify 10 years of challenges in 1 year. Right?
And that's the
Is that even
retroactive 10
possible?
years, right?
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Right.
So we're going so fast, and we haven't even talked about sort of the redshirt rules. We haven't even talked about Diego Pavia, who's now sued because he wants his junior college years back. Like that's going to open up a whole nother discussion that we can get into as well.
Well, when there's money on the line, we know there's lawyers coming along with it.
Yeah.
And that's really a big part of it.
With saying that now, the university, is it like kind of like having like a GM now at the university?
Yeah, we do.
Well, the basketball
Okay.
program, Alex Klein, right?
The football team
Football
have
has
GM
the
too?
same.
Yeah,
Okay.
football has
Okay.
one. Women's basketball, we need to get one there too.
Okay.
And then we need to kind of look at some different analytical situations. Like we have a really good, robust plug for our sports analytics program and trying to work with athletics to see what are the different values when it comes to the house money, where it's, hey, number one, what's your academics, right? So you got to have good grades. What's your performance? Because that performance provides exposure to Syracuse University, right? Thursday night, we're going to be playing on national TV for men's basketball versus Texas, and that helps the university and licensing and everything else. And then maybe what's your social media following?
Yeah.
Because if we're going to have this house settlement and we're going to pay a Sam lacrosse player, $5,000.
But if she's killing it on TikTok,
She's killing it on TikTok. She provides exposure to the institution for maybe the new house school. We want more applications because we're always trying to increase enrollment.
let's take a quick break before we wrap this up. We want to get back to the idea of what do athletes and parents need to know, parents of athletes need to know about NIL, how it all works, and this idea of pay to play, sort of. More on that when we come back. This dynamic discussion continues, pay to play, the changing landscape of college sports. We're trying to stay focused on NIL. I don't know if it's also gone from this way to that way, but fascinating, isn't it?
And it's very complex. I feel like at this point in time, there is more questions than answers. On the one hand, you can say that we're going in the right direction. At least I think so, in the sense that athletes are getting paid.
And I mentioned parents and families and athletes coming into college. Now, I want to at least address that too, so they have something they can take away from this. I mean, you have boys that are athletes,
Yeah.
and they may not be going to play football for Michigan, right? So
Correct.
it's more of the common story.
Yeah, it's really the common story. We have one that's playing Division III baseball and one that's beginning the recruiting process right now. And I think what folks need to understand from the House settlement will be the roster limits. So, for example, we're looking right now and talking a lot about this with my youngest, is that the roster limits for baseball are 34. Well, there could be a school that supports baseball and says we're only going to give 5 scholarships, right? So I think parents have to be realistic. I had nothing but an amazing experience playing at Ithaca College Division III baseball, right? And then this guy played at the top of the top, right? Super Bowl winner here. So I think every parent has to be realistic, and that's really tough because a lot of us want to go on Facebook and say that Susie or Jimmy signed a Division I scholarship. And the reality of that, Matt, is it's changing because of the roster limits.
Well, it's also possible that an athlete could say yes to Division I soccer scholarship under these new rules, get into the second year or third year, and then be told your scholarship isn't available anymore.
Yeah,
right?
It depends on the institution. Like Syracuse has done a really good job that if you come in to honor that for 4 years.
They will, even under the new rules.
Yeah, so under the new rules, I can't speak on behalf of John and the administration, but they're always really cognizant of the importance of education and their commitment to education.
That's good.
And the utilization of athletics to get a scholarship, right? So every institution's a little bit different. There are ways where the transfer portal now, you know, when we look at the roster limits, that if a student athlete maybe is not exactly what you thought on the pitch or the ice or the court, that there's ways to sort of tell them, hey, you're probably not going to play. And then that athlete kind of is forced in some way, shape, or form to go in the portal. Otherwise, they did say, hey, I'm going to stay at Syracuse and I understand my role.
James, you mentioned this a couple of times, the accountability of grade level. You mentioned you came to Syracuse for the education. Do you feel like, or are you concerned that education and that free ride in many cases is being lost in this all this talk about endorsements and money, or is it continuing along that still appreciated the value of the education?
Well, it's a little bit of both. And for me, like dealing with the whole NIL stuff, it's like the hunger. I was very hungry, as you would say, very hungry as accomplished to play professional football to make money. But making money in college, do I still have the same hunger to play professional? Because you're saying, you know, the quarterback from Michigan is about to make $10 million in 4 years. I didn't make $10 million playing professional football.
Right.
So therefore, where's my hunger at? You know,
the hunger to keep working just as hard.
Yeah. Or be satisfied of making, you know, in my boat, I think I probably would have made more money in college than professionally, you know, honestly.
Sure.
And,
especially if Dave was your agent back then.
I would love to have David Meluni. Yeah. But I mean, that's how it would have been most likely. I was a free agent, running back, going, you know, with the Colts, and I'm great for the opportunity and all like that. But I would have made more money in college than I did
And the dome would have been filled with the Mungro jersey, you know.
It would have been filled with something. I know it would have been, my pockets would have been filled. So when I say that now,
so that's good. But you also got the degree and the education, right?
Yes,
so that value still exists
100%.
And should be appreciated. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it does. But I knew to get to where I want to get to, I had to get my education, no matter what. And that's the process of I had to get my education. Now with the NIL deal, you know, I'm making good money. Am I still hungry to play professional, or do I just try to invest that money the best way possible and be satisfied with that?
That's
Matt,
interesting point.
One thing here for James is when he was playing at Syracuse, there were times of years that time of the year that he went home. How awesome would it have been, James, that you had other friends that played at other schools that you guys could have run a camp.
Yeah.
And you might have made $5,000 to $10,000. And to this day, right, everybody knows who James Mungro is, but he would have been known maybe for this camp that became pretty prestigious.
Yeah.
And to this day right now, then you're just adding to the
Just
legacy.
adding on, yeah.
You're just
I mean,
adding on.
every
You could be
year.
running a camp in PA
But
now.
a college athlete couldn't do that then.
Couldn't do that
As
then.
opposed to when you were in the pros, you were certainly free to have a camp.
And when I was in the pros, that's what I did. In the
Right.
summertime, me and the other guys, we would meet up in the summertime and run camps and do camps, you know, with the youngsters and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's unbelievable. I do feel like it is worth a beat to say, as much as we are scrutinizing it because it's our job to look at what still needs to be done. I don't think that the average fan realizes how many opportunities and ways there are to make money now that this is in play.
Sure.
It's not just the Instagram and the social media and the brand deals. Maybe it is camps, maybe it is jerseys. The opportunities are endless, and I think to a lot of kids and athletes, that money really makes a difference. But my question, particularly for James Mungro, might be, how much of a difference does it make? Would NIL have been the biggest factor if you were able to, quote unquote, make a bag, or were there other things like the team chemistry and the coach and the opportunity to win that would have been equally as important?
Well, that is, and at that time and back in '97, Syracuse was a great football team. They were just heading upwards, and great players, great coaches, and but there's other teams though as well. I mean, there's other competitive teams that are just as good as Syracuse, and I could have chose from. But in that aspect of degree-wise and all that type of stuff, I felt like Syracuse was the best fit for me, for my degree, close to family. Parents weren't rich, so they couldn't fly to all the games. But with NIL deal, there's a different change now. Now, and it's legal too. Now illegal to have your parents fly to away games or going to home games. So there's a lot of stuff though. This is so much different things of how you would approach this now.
Yeah, I mean, the recommendation, like yesterday, the transfer portal opened for women's soccer. There's an anticipation that there's going to be 900 female student athlete soccer players in that portal.
Why?
A lot of that has to do with the restriction now on the rosters going down to 28.
So they know that they're the one that has to go?
Yeah.
Before
So-
they're told?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Matt, they've been told.
Or they've been told.
So the Penn State women's soccer program, all of their incoming recruits, because of the roster limits, were basically told like, hey, we're not going to sign you because of this. And the coach has been really good. It's all in the national media now that she's been reaching out to other schools trying to help those young ladies. There's a lot of pressure here for student athletes, and we haven't even talked about this whole mental health side of things. James knows how much time that he spent in the weight room, in the film, on the field, in the classroom. Coach P, just like Coach Fran, that academic component, like there's somebody outside your door making sure you're walking in that classroom.
You talk about the mental health, and maybe that's a good place to kind of wrap this for the day, and the pressure. I would think that if I was a relatively elite athlete coming out of high school, that I'd be thinking dollar signs. And how do you even get your mind off that to be focused on, no, I need to become a better player or athlete, and the rest of that will follow? That seems like a big challenge. And are universities addressing that?
Yeah, and I was just going to say it is a responsibility of the university to make sure that you have those folks that you can go to outside of your respective coaching staffs. Because like James had a running back, fullback coach, that the way that individual feeds his family and takes care of his family is based off of the performance of an 18 to 22-year-old kid.
Sure.
And so institutions right now should really be looking at who am I going to hire in that mental health capacity, or using the university, like specifically like we have some of those folks in Falk College that can assist, and really having a robust system, because you do not want this thing to go sideways.
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I know that some schools have that. Even going to Colgate, I sort of helped to start this program called Wellness Advocates that would help with student athletes. It was sort of like one liaison for each team. And you could talk about those kinds of things and issues. Does Syracuse have any program specifically for athletes where the focus is mental health, or psychologists maybe, or therapists who can discuss these kinds of issues?
James, you're smiling. It sounds like, do they need it, or did it?
They do have that. They have that. My wife was involved with that many years back when they first got it started. Probably I would say 5 or 6 years ago. They were behind, but they just built a brand new facility up there with great psychologists and stuff like that, and they're going upwards. And they do have that for the students. My wife has met with a lot of different students and stuff like that, and everything is very confidential, and it's something that I 100% believe in, and it totally helps out the players go through difficult times, and they're able to talk to someone and have that trust to be able to explain and express how they feel about certain things, what's going on in their life.
Well, trust is a big part of it. As we're wrapping up this discussion, I want to thank Professor Meluni for giving us all this insight. James, for bringing these questions and your personal experience as well. And Sam, the same with you, your personal experience and great questions. I mean, we really could just keep hashing out these issues. And I got the feeling we could do it. Maybe we should make a date for next year, same time, to see how much it's changed since in that 1 year's time.
6 months, I would say.
Right. And certainly by next academic year especially. So thanks to everybody for joining us for this expertise. We hope you all got something out of it at home. Pay to Play, our special program. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later on.